Welcome to the Peace One Day 20-year celebration at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. I'm very honoured to be here with an incredible group of people that you're going to be listening to in just a moment. This first panel discussion is at the heart of Peace One Day's work. Take a stand. Say no to sexism and harassment. Take a stand. Say no to sexism and harassment, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating. But firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank two people who have made this possible. Firstly, Avon, who have been sponsoring Peace One Day, and also the Council of Europe. So I'd like to thank Avon and the Council of Europe for their incredible support. Thank you very much. So Peace One Day is 20 years old today, and we're marking this special occasion here at Shakespeare's Globe. The backstory to this is that 20 years ago I had a thought that I was confused and frightened and I wanted to make a film about peace, and then I realised there was no day of peace. So I went on a journey to see if we could create that day, and with the help and support of all kinds of people, we made it happen. It began here, in fact, at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. The whole world voted the 21st of September unanimously at the United Nations, and that was incredible. 21st of September, Peace Day. After that journey was complete, we also went out to see if we could manifest a ceasefire on the day. And again, after years of work with the support of the United Nations, UNAMA, UNICEF, WHO, other agencies, NGOs, it worked. And all parties in Afghanistan ceasefired, including the Taliban. And 1.4 million children got a polio vaccination. It was incredible, and we told that story. The next journey was to tell an awful lot of people about the day, to institutionalize the day. And there are huge numbers all over the world who are celebrating right now as we speak. And that's absolutely incredible. What I find most fascinating about the 21st of September is that 95% of the violence that happens today is going to happen in our homes, communities, schools, and places of work. So how important that we gather in this moment to talk about that violence. Only 5% happens in an area of conflict. So this is what it's all about. It's about you, it's about me, it's about us engaging, reaching out today, saying sorry, reconciling our differences, building bridges in our homes, communities, schools, and places of work. That's incredible. This is an amazing panel, and I can't wait to get into it. Sorry for getting so excited, but I mean, it's amazing. It really genuinely is. So, yeah. So I will now introduce some really important people. I'd like to introduce Marja Ruotanen from the Council of Europe, who, thank you so much for coming, and our Peace One Day ambassador, Juliet, Rylance, who's a huge support and has helped us produce today. She's going to be amazing, and thank you both of you for really leading today. And then, to our panel, I'd like to thank Liliane Pasquier, the President, Parliamentary Assembly, Council of Europe. Thank you so much. Real honour that you're here today. The Right Honourable Patricia Scotland QC, the Secretary General at the Commonwealth, a friend and a mentor, and we've done a lot of work together. Thank you so much for being here. To Will Gardner, the CEO at Childnet and Director at the UK Safer Internet Centre. Thank you, Will. To Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu. Thank you. That's a wonderful name to get right. Lawyer and political and women's rights activist, it really is. Thank you so much for being here, true honour. And to Zijderveld, the CEO of Avon Foundation for Women, thank you for your support of us, and I know many of those companies would be very grateful for what you're doing in relation to women around the world. Thank you. So, let's begin. Juliet and Marja, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you for that incredible introduction, and it's incredibly inspiring to be here today. And this is a panel discussion for us here in the room and also for you at home. So please ask questions and let's begin.
Let's begin, and thank you, Jeremy, for having given it such a nice, enthusiastic tone. So I will start with the question to Liliane Pasquier, who is the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. It brings together 47 parliaments in Europe. And you are one of the first presidents who is a woman. There have been a couple of women before, but you are one of the first ones. So it's an institution that has a long history, of course. We are celebrating 70 years today, and now you are taking a lead as giving the woman the visibility in this important part of the Council of Europe. So, Madam President, about 1 year ago, you launched, or the Assembly launched this initiative, Not in My Parliament hashtag. You see it here. And it's an initiative, the purpose is to counter sexism, harassment against women in parliaments. And you actually have promoted it to be launched in all the national parliaments. We have several of our member states now have already started it, and you have said also that you would like it to be spread in other places than Parliament, not in my office, not in my team, not in my hospital, and so on and so forth. So, as I said before to some of the panelists, Liliane doesn't have a copyright, but you can please continue with this hashtag initiative. So we would like to know what motivated you to launch this initiative and what you exactly would like to achieve with it.
Thank you, Marja and Juliet, for sure. First of all, let me say that we heard alarming figures revelated by a joint study between Parliamentary Assembly and IPU. Just give you a few numbers in order that you can understand how huge was these figures. 1 in 4 women MPs was sexually harassed during her mandate. 1 in 4. 85% have been victims of psychological violence. 85, almost every MPs. And these figures were not only alarming when you speak about members of parliament, female members of parliament, but also when speaking with women working for parliamentarians. And because in one case and the other, it's very difficult for the victims of such attitudes to complain, to speak about, and to do something on this figure. And almost of all women MPs have been affected by sexism or harassment, it was unacceptable. And so it's the reason why I thought last year that it was necessary to react, to take my responsibility, not as president, but as a member of my parliament. And so, because I'm responsible of what happens in my place of work, and it's also the reason why it's not it's not a private thing that we can share, and everyone must have the possibility to say not in my office, not in my university, not in my theater. And we have a lot of things to do together, because we are responsible for the place we are working in and living in. And for sure, it was also in the wake of the Me Too movement. Parliaments have nothing to be proud of. We also could say MPs too, unfortunately. And this act are committed with apparent impunity and acceptance. And because of this, there's very low reporting rates, and it's also a huge concern. And maybe I can just give you one short example of one episode. I was not able to report, and it was not a long time ago, but last year, I had with some other MPs, but also they were all male. They a confidential meeting in order to try to find a way out of one political problem. And during this meeting, one of the MPs came and said, "Oh, darling," and so such an attitude. For sure, it was not violent, but it's like if I'm someone less than the others, and only being here to be as a woman and not as MPs like all the others. And I must say, I didn't find at that time the good way to react, because if I would have the reflex to say stop it, or maybe also say, "Oh, darling, how are you?" But I'm not sure he would have understood what I meant. So, and after that, I was also not able to speak about this, because if I've done it, so for sure the agreement we made could have been in danger. So it's also a very difficult situation. And I'm really convinced that in healthy democracy, parliaments must be a model institution, a place of work where women and men can fulfill duties on an equal footing and in total security. And because it's important for the effectiveness of the institution, but also for the image of the parliament in the eyes of the public, and the model it can play in achieving gender equality in society. And for all these reasons, thinking that enough is enough, this situation has been tolerated far too long and need to reverse this trend and move forward towards equality. So for sure we need, in order to accomplish this change, we have to make our legislative work as parliamentarians, but also as everybody, everyone in this room, to change mentalities and educate to equality. And that was the seeds of the idea with the hashtag Not in My Parliament. And for sure, I invite you all to take it back home and to use it everywhere in the world, because we have to raise awareness, to send a zero tolerance message, and to push for change in our own parliaments and our own countries. Refusing to remain silent, because I'm really convinced that not Council of Europe parliaments, we are 47 member states, can continue to pretend to be not to be aware of or blind. And I urge all speakers of the 47 member states to take action. Yes, let's say maybe we can be quite hopeful that it will work. Thank you.
Liliane. And as you said, everybody is a role model, but so are the parliamentarians. And I think, to have the trust of people in how they behave, you really must lead the way. So thank you for everything you have started.
Thank you. Secretary General, Patricia, you're a very strong, well-known advocate for women's rights and empowerment. And throughout your legal career and political career, you've denounced violence against women and domestic violence as a serious violation of human rights. As you rightly say, if there is not peace in the home, there will not be peace in our world. You're also a strong believer and work towards the empowerment of future female leaders. How do we break the vicious cycle of silence and the taboos surrounding violence against women and ensure that violence and sexism don't get on their way and in their way and dissuade women from their right and responsibility to contribute to our societies?
Well, I think what we've just heard is what we have to do. Not being complicit and not being silent. Yeah. Because domestic violence in particular affects 1 in 3 women in the world. And it's the greatest cause of morbidity for women and girls. That means it's killing and injuring more women and girls than any other single issue. More than road traffic, more than HIV, more than anything you can think of. And if it was anything else, we'd be marching on the streets saying, this has to stop. And it's absolutely critical for us to say prevention is where we have to be, and it starts with all of us, because every single one of us has a mother. And one of the campaigns that we were thinking is to say, for the women in my life, we all have women in our lives whom we love. And what we also know is there's a direct correlation between what a child will achieve at the age of 22 months and what a person will achieve at the age of 22 years. So if you're a child born into a home where there is conflict and anger and violence, that inculcates into you things that you may never, ever be able to expunge. So if we look at the figures, you will find that people who've been brought up in those homes are overrepresented in every area of dysfunction. There are higher numbers who commit suicide. There are higher numbers who have different forms of mental illness. There are higher numbers who use drugs or alcohol to cure some of the pain and the insecurities that they experienced whilst growing up. And we also know that there is a direct correlation between the length of time you live and the happiness of the quality of your relationships. So it's absolutely critical that we look at prevention, but also we have to look at, so what is our legislation? What are we saying? And if we have the legislation, what are we doing to enforce it? Because it's great, lots of our countries have beautiful legislation. I am the Secretary General, the first woman to be Secretary General of an organisation which brings together 53 countries. 53 countries from 6 different regions, and we have 2.4 billion people 60% of them are under the age of 30. So there's a real opportunity, because we represent people of all races, all colours, all religions and all cultures. And what do we know about domestic violence? It is no respect of violence of class, religion, culture, position. So you are just as likely to be subjected to it as an MP or an artist or a singer or a parliamentarian or a CEO. So there is nothing which differentiates one from the other. So I think the most powerful thing we can do is not be silent, and to be able, when we speak to someone and they say, and you see that there's something wrong with them, actually say, how are you? But instead of going, how are you, and moving on, I would suggest we say, how are you? Take a second, look, listen, and wait. And if there's silence, say, no, really, how are you? Because I think unless we see this as an issue, we are not going to do something about it. So in the Commonwealth, we are definitely doing something about it. I've just come back from the Commonwealth Women Ministers' Affairs meeting in Kenya, and we've made really clear that domestic violence, violence against women and girls, non-negotiable. We are launching a number of campaigns, and I hope everyone on this panel will be part of it, and everyone out there too, because we are going to launch and continue to profess that there has to be peace in our home. But I'd also like to say we need to do something for the women in our lives. So that's the second one.
That's wonderful, thank you. And it's amazing hearing you talking about children, obviously, and the importance of children and all of this, which brings us nicely to Will, who's the CEO at Childnet and director at the UK Safer Internet Centre. Childnet International has done valuable work to make internet a great and safe place for children. You've conducted research and put together some fantastic resources to help children, young people, teachers, carers, parents and professionals to tackle sexual harassment online, which is quite prevalent. What would you say are the main challenges our societies face in keeping up with technological development and ever-growing social networks to keep children and young people safe and empower them to speak up against online sexual harassment and violence? Is there any good practice you can share with us?
Thank you very much. I think it's great that we have cyber included, number one, cyber included in today, because it's such an important part of all of our lives, but particularly children and young people. So that's to cover number one. And then, well, what are the things where we have to catch up? We have to try and keep pace with technology, but we have to keep pace with young people's experience of technology. And we're hearing about, how parliamentarians are subject to vicious sexism and harassment, and the online harassment in particular. When we hear about MPs receiving sexual threats online, we just have to think, well, what is the experience of children and young people in that space? Because technology has this amazing dual function. It can amplify amazingly well, where we can today be talking here and hoping our messages are reached out far and wide. But at the same time, it can be a bit silencing. Some things go under the radar. So we've got these two conflicting journeys, and we've been running some research and focus groups with children and young people we were originally talking about cyberbullying, because this had a lot of coverage about young people's experience of their online lives. But in those focus groups, young people were talking about online pages that were set up, linked to their school community or wherever, where young people would be sharing images, sometimes nude or nearly nude images, sometimes just images that would attract a sexual commentary underneath it. And the young people in this instance were saying, well, we would never tell anybody about that. And if we were hearing about sort of this power of sort of silence in this space, it absolutely is there too. So in the work that we've done, we've been trying to kind of shine a bit of a light as to what is young people's experience in this area. And we did some research in the UK and Denmark and Hungary, and we picked out a number of different facets of online sexual harassment, which is non-consensual image taking, non-consensual image sharing, sexual threats that I mentioned online. 10% of the young people said that they've received sexual threats directly online, including rape threats. But 29% of young people have witnessed that. And what we want to do is to try and make sure we're busy to challenge this. This is not a norm. This is not what our expectations of engaging with technology should be. This is not what young people should just expect and then have to put up with it. We need to get alongside young people to say that we understand that this is happening and there are some things that you can do about it. But in addition, we also looked at sexualized bullying, where you may remember the playground type of bullying that would take place about people's sexual activity or perceived sexual activity or sexual orientation and so on. And this is happening online too, and the amplification effect can be very harmful and very damaging for young people in this space. But also unwanted sexualization, being sent unwanted sexual content or so on. So there's kind of a number of different areas. And what was really interesting, this is behaviors between young people. So we were asking 13 to 17-year-olds these questions, and they were talking about behaviors that they had or saw between other young people. And it was very, very similar, more similar than different, the experience of children in the UK to Denmark and to Hungary. There's kind of a universal experience, which I think, there's an opportunity for us to then reach out broader than our nations to see how we can best look to try and respond to these types of issues. And in terms of how do we respond, this is absolutely about increasing online safety, and it is not about taking technology away from children and young people. Technology is extraordinary. It has a huge power for good, as we're seeing, even today as a great example. But we need to harness that good, because young people are supporting other young people using online methods to if they see another young person having difficulty, they will reach out and support them using social media, for example. So there is that positive. But we need to inform young people and support young people, and also those who are closely supporting them. So teachers and police and parents need to have a clear understanding of what online sexual harassment is and what they can do to best support children and young people. And we know if we can get educators, for example, to take the front foot. We organised Safer Internet Day in the UK, and we had nearly half of schools say, we supported Safer Internet Day, and it led to disclosures of potential online safeguarding issues. So as a school, we took the first step, and then young people felt confident to come and talk to us about it. And I think that's a big part of the response that we need to do. We can't just sit back and let technology race away and let young people's use of technology race away. We need to keep pace with what is going on and work out, because young people are often pioneering in this whole relationship space. Technology thrown in can make it quite complicated. What is consent online? What does that really mean? What is a healthy relationship online? I think these are big questions that we can't expect young people to come up with by themselves. We need to make sure we're working alongside young people and those supporting to make sure that we are guiding people in the right direction. Tackling issues like victim blaming, which I'm sure will come up in our conversations again today. Making sure that young people know how to respond, not just to report, but also how to respond to young people who have been affected in this way.
Can I just add something as a mother of 3 children? What you are saying is extremely interesting, but it's very challenging also, because before on the playground you could see things, but now on the cyberspace you don't see it. So it's totally invisible for parents. So that's something that I find it as a challenge to address.
It's so all the more we need to make those reporting routes more accessible, but also to make people confident what happens when I make a report. Because when you are making a report, you can make yourself quite exposed and vulnerable. You are ceding control in a way in some direction, unless you're confident about what the outcome might be.
Yes. I think your point as well about the internet as a tool, for something either positive or negative. I think Jeremy's seen that very strongly with Peace One Day, that when there has been work leading up to Peace Day with schools, there's this incredible drop in violent activity in schools and in bullying in schools on Peace Day. So you do get these wonderful moments where you think, this can be a fabulous tool for us. And the flip side, I've heard some of those stories recently about, kids being private images that friends took, then being sent around an entire school, and that child not being able to come in for a week or a month, or feeling shamed by something. So it is something we do need to learn more about. How we're using it.
Mobilising young people to be part of the solution is very exciting, given that harnessing the passion they have for technology. And the passion they have about being safe online, and helping them to support their peers. I think there's a big movement that we want to try and create.
Brilliant. Thank you all. Dr. Shola, you are a women rights champion, a founder and editor-in-chief of the Women in Leadership publication, which is wonderful, which in your words aims to provide solution-led content and thought leadership focused on the advancement of women in all walks of life. Are we at a turning point and starting to see women as leaders for change? Change that will contribute to more just, fair, inclusive and peaceful societies? How do we overcome barriers to make sure this positive trend will continue?
I'll say the first answer to that is yes. Heck yes. It's been a long time coming, but thank you, Jesus, we're there. I mean, there's still a whole lot more work to do. Now, women as leaders, it's interesting that society is finally catching up to who women are. We've been leaders from time immemorial, right? So sometimes when I get this question about, what about men? What about men? We gave birth to you, we fed you, we schooled you, we educated you, we married you, gave you children, we make sure that you're successful. Come on. We've been leading from day one. But part of the issue around promoting women in leadership is this whole culture, when we talk about sexism and harassment, that is rooted in misogyny, right? And bigotry towards women. And it's been a long time that we've had to keep fighting internally, externally, visibly, invisibly. You have women like those who are represented here today who are breaking down the barriers, causing positive disruption. The only thing is that sometimes, because of we women, when we do something, it's not as loud as when men do it and they throw their, their toys out of a pram. And I think part of what you then find nowadays in the current era that we have is that women are getting more visible, more loud, they're getting more powerful. And I totally advocate that. I go, look, none of that, no offense, British politeness, or waiting to be asked, or maybe you should get consent first. Forget all that nonsense. Because, let me tell you right now, humility is good, but it doesn't get you jack all. You keep being humble with your silence, it's going to take another 100 years for you to get where you need to get to. I don't know about you, but I don't have 100 years. As much as I want a better future for my children, I have 3 girls, I want a great future, a great now for me, for all of us. Part of my activism is encouraging women. Remember, I'm not using the word empowering. Why? Because women are empowered already. What we need to do is power them the heck up. And when I say power them up, I'm saying that as we have women leaders, right? Same thing as men do. When a role comes up on the board, right? An opportunity comes up on the board. Yeah, I know they go through the whole vacancy recruitment thing. But you hear someone go, oh, I think James will be good for that. I know John will be good for that. I think we need to change that to Shola will be great for that. Juliet will be great for that. Let's start mentioning women's names. We power them up. And don't get me wrong, there are men who are doing a great job. So not all men are out there being oblivious or not doing their bit. There are men who are trying to do the right thing. But I think that even in trying to include men in this conversation, sometimes men think, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to step on the wrong toes. Get educated. Do not be afraid. We need your privilege. We need the power that your male sex represents to help change the narrative. So in my journey, in the work that I do, I have been inspired by some, if I may say so, badass women, right? Who are positively disrupting and breaking down barriers like, throwing a pin against you. You know what I mean? It's just like they say, we understand what the obstacles are, but we need to face them. And I think one of the things that we women face is the cultural obstacles that come from our individual cultures that tell us that women, your place is in the home, or women, your place is as a mother, or actually you're not a full woman if you don't have children, or if you're all of those stereotypes, right? It is time for us to define who we are. So I, as Shola, I define who I am. So if someone takes a look at me and go, if they see me, I don't know, dancing my head off one moment, and I am really, energetic, you can tell I'm very Nigerian, my hands, my whole body speaks at the same time. And then they get really surprised, but they go, ooh, she's a lawyer. She does A, B, C, D. I'm like, why would you be surprised at that? Who says that there is a full stop after my name? I teach my daughters that there is no full stop after your name. There are loads of commas. So yes, I'm Shola the mommy, Shola the lawyer, Shola the writer, Shola did this, and there's some comments I don't know yet, but they're coming, and God, please keep them coming. But in the journey of women, it is so important that we empower. When I use the word empower in this, I mean we inspire each other. So if you sat down with either Baroness Scotland or Liliane here, and you listen to their story, their own individual stories, you go, how the heck did you do that? That is what I try to do through my publication. Because, one of the key things is you hear people's success stories. And my father warned me, he gave me very, very good advice over 20 years ago. And I was thinking, Daddy, that's not what I'm talking about. I called him to moan that I had failed an exam. And how could I fail this exam? Because I've got things planned. I was meant to pass the exam so I could do ABC. And I kept ranting. This is him in Lagos, me in London. I can't believe I did this. So he just went, are you done? I said, yes. He said, you should thank God you're going through what you're going through now. I was in my 20s. And now when you're 40, I said, what kind of advice is that? But now I understand. Because if you take time to listen to the stories, the inspirational journeys of other women, it actually inspires you. And so through the work that I do, through my activism, I want to connect women in Brazil to women in Kenya, women in India to women, far along in China. I want them to recognize that their journey, however singular, is actually not that, different. And that we can get strength from each other, right? You talked about cyber violence. Talk about the fact that, for instance, MPs are experiencing all forms of, sexism, bigotry, misogyny, right? They're not the only ones. Can I just say this? All of the behaviors that we see today, even from top politicians, political leaders, they were already expressing and demonstrating this behavior before they got to power. What did we do about it when we saw it? That's the question I'm asking. All of these issues we're talking about started at home, but nobody's really calling it out. Even, if I may say so, the mamas with their sons who make excuses. No, it has to stop. Or if you as a sister or as a friend, you see your friend taking the wrong turn or saying the wrong thing, speak truth to power. That is why through the activism that I do, I encourage women that, look, I know we are fearful. And, and sometimes we feel powerless, we feel helpless, right? But sometimes being brave just requires an act. We don't all have to be loud. I mean, I think I was born loud. As soon as I came out, I was shouting, right? But we can be the Rosa Parks of our generation. Just don't get up and start a whole new revolution. That's what I'm talking about. It is you being an influencer, not waiting for LinkedIn to call you an influencer, but you become an influencer in your own sphere, on your high street, on the bus, in your workplace, in your school, and using that to make a difference that would gradually obliterate all of this sexism. Call it out where you see it. And where you feel afraid to, speak to someone you trust. And you know what? If you don't have the voice, please come and lend mine. Honestly, in fact, my husband would be happy. Yes, let that voice go outside. You know what I mean? But together we can make this change we want, and together with men, not excluding men, please. We live in a society that's men and women, right? And it's important that we all speak together. I grew up with a feminist father. There was never one time he ever said I couldn't do something. In fact, he always encouraged me to do more, all the time. So I suppose part of me is shocked sometimes when I go, your father told you that? Why? But it is important to also recognize that not all fathers are like that. Not all men are like that. It's probably also because of how they've been brought up. But enough of the excuses, people. You and I are not here to exist based on somebody else's past mistakes or the fact that they refuse to get educated. So we use the opportunity and the platforms we have, whatever it may be. So whether it's me as a lawyer, as a writer, or the fact that I do the Women in Leadership publication, or as an activist, to speak truth to power, hold power to account. And that's not just the Boris Johnsons and the Donald Trumps of this world. That's also those you have in your workplaces and at home.
Shola, thank you. And I think, obviously we have two incredible men up here with us. And it is a really important thing that men are also getting behind these movements. The Women's March, my father, both my fathers, my biological father and my stepfather marched with me. The Time's Up movement has incredible male support as well. So we're very grateful that you're up here with us too.
Absolutely, and as you, Dr. Shola, said that there are men who are doing an amazing job, and I think we have to recognize that. And you, Jan, as a COE of Avon Foundation for Women, you are actually one of those men that are doing a great job. And you have actually, Avon has a very long history of advocating breaking the cycle of violence and discrimination through its Stand for Her campaign and also promise to end violence against women and girls. As a COE, you have led the company on this amazing journey and really tried to promote the economic independence of women to empower themselves. How can you and how can the other business leaders act to make this happen reality?
Thank you. So first and foremost, I think to start off with the responsibility of business. I firmly believe that business not only can, but must be a force for good. It's so integral in our society. It produces our products and services that we all enjoy. It employs most of the people. It generates a huge amount of economic wealth. But it has a much broader responsibility than that, than just producing wealth and products and services. It has to put at its heart a purpose to make the world better and to start thinking about not consumers, but citizens. And we shouldn't be only selling to consumers, we should be selling to citizens, because citizens don't only want nice products and lipstick, but citizens expect and demand from the companies behind those products that they're thinking about the holistic element. You know, how is it made? Who has made it? What are your values? What do you stand for? And I think that is a really, really important element, not only to survive today, but also to survive as a business in the long term. So this whole shift from a company that thinks about consumers versus citizens, I think is a huge leap that I think all businesses must make. And it is also important to run a successful business. I don't think you can be a successful business if you don't think about citizens versus consumers. Because first of all, increasingly our consumers demand that we do the right thing and that we make products in the right way and that we behave in the right way. Secondly, and increasingly, the new generation wants to work for companies that make a difference, not just get a salary slip and have a career and have a nice life, but they want to go home and talk to their families and their friends about the company and what it stands for and what it tries to do and how it tries to improve society. Whether it's about the environment and, you know, how the youth mobilized yesterday is phenomenal, and you see what the youth is demanding, not just from the society, but also the future employers. So I think business has to be part of the solution and not the problem. And it needs to do this in partnership. It needs to we need to create more private and public partnerships together and pick as a company a theme, an element that is close to it, where it can make a long-term difference. Because what you see increasingly is that the politicians, unfortunately, are going very short-term and have actually limited horizons about a geography, just a country. Luckily, you represent many more countries. But most politicians are one country, short-term, want to be re-elected, whereas business, Avon has been in business for 133 years. I would like to be this company to be in business for another 133 years. So we've got to think about our brands, our company, our capabilities, our resources, not 3 years, not 5 years, but in decades. So that's why I firmly believe that business needs to think about, you know, its role in society. Then if I think about Avon, which I joined now a few years ago, I'm so proud to lead this organization that I couldn't think of many companies that has, I was going to say women empowerment, but now about powering up women. I now have to change my whole speech. Powering up women around the world. You know, we have the biggest network of women around the world. We have 6 million women and 6 million families and their children that in some way rely on Avon to make a slightly better living, to make them, you know, learn more, earn more in over 60 countries. And that, you know, and if we do that well, we're successful. If we don't do that very well, actually the business will disappear. So at our heart is the powering up of our women around the world to become more successful. And if we do that well, our business will grow. And then I hone in and say, well, okay, we are powering up women in terms of economic liberation and earning and learning more. But we should also be standing up for issues that are important for women, because there's not many other companies that are so connected to women and women's causes that Avon is in so many countries. You know, we started with breast cancer about 20 years ago, and I'm really proud of what the business has done in so many countries to bring awareness, but also really drive about what do you do when you do have the symptoms of breast cancer. And what we've picked up over the last number of years is violence against women and girls. And I must say, I I was not aware of the problem until I really joined Avon, and I started flying around the world, meeting many of the women that are in our organization and the societies in which we live. And you go to Brazil, you go to Argentina, you go to South Africa, you go to Central and Eastern Europe, where we are very, very strong. It is a massive issue. And honestly, when you start hearing the stories of the tip of the iceberg of the deaths involved. I was in Argentina, where I was really confronted. Every 24 hours a woman dies because of domestic violence. And then I was so proud of what we were doing in Argentina with other people, with the government, with the United Nations, with other companies to change the law and to drive protection, legal protection, and then drive the enforcement of the legal protection and drive awareness. And then I was in Brazil, and there's not one woman every 24 hours, it's 13 women every day get killed because of domestic violence. And it's just totally unacceptable. And in fact, we had a massive town hall of 1,000 people, and we were talking about that. And you see people crying in the audience, and you also hear that even in our own company we have issues. So therefore, our CEO in Brazil, we mobilized 100 CEOs last month, with again the government and the right NGOs, to mobilize people to drive this awareness and drive this issue into people's consciousness. So we can really drive as a company, whether it's in Argentina, Brazil, South Africa, everywhere around the world, and we should see how we can partner with you more to really drive awareness, because we are a marketing organization. But we are also trying to match coach this morning to see how it works. But to drive awareness and to really make this issue a more important issue. But actually at the root of the cause is actually economic empowerment. And violence is a symptom of the cause of women not being powered up enough in an economic and social sense. And what you see, and you see it in the lovely videos that Jeremy made of some of our Avon sales leaders and women around the world, is that when you empower women to earn some money, to start learning how to run a business, to start learning how to speak in front of an audience, to start creating a network of other women and support system, I have seen women transform. Honestly, you see them, and you see this shy woman that then starts to earn money, starts to talk to women, and you see them standing in front of an audience of 20, 30, 40 people, standing there, shoulders back, proud, and telling them about their story. I bought a car, I'm going on holiday, my kids can go to school. Their husband looks at them differently. Their children say, wow, that's my mum. That's my mum standing there. Their sons look at them differently. And that is what it's all about, because then you start changing the debate, you start changing the sense of confidence. So I think the real root, solution to this is really economic empowerment, and seeing how we can teach, earn and learn the women around the world to feel more powered up to fight this whole issue.
Thank you very much, Jan. Could I just thank all those who are watching, because we are being broadcasted worldwide. And we are receiving a lot of positive comments, really a lot. So thank you everybody who is commenting from around the world. So thank you for these comments. You said something very important also about the mindsets. And I think that's, we know what it takes. It's not rocket science how to stop violence against women. But how can a company who is in business make the difference, for example, in advertisement, because you see still advertisements that are so sexist. How do you stop that? It's very, very difficult. I'm putting the question to all the panelists, because I would like to move now into a exchange between everybody. So any ideas how we address that?
I think many of the companies, the more responsible companies, have made commitments around this area already. So some have talked about size zero, reducing sexism. So there's some leading companies that are trying to change the debate in terms of advertising. The second one is just using the power of companies that have their network. We have 6 million women, to use our network to make a statement. But also what we've done is we made quite a few great videos to highlight the problem. I mean, one we made, Violence Against Women, won a Cannes Award just now, a few months ago, a Bronze Cannes Award, which is a beautiful little film. But again, highlighting the issue, because we have capabilities, we can make these films. So what we can do, first of all, is our advertising, and using our marketing muscle and our big networks to raise awareness. And the second thing is get involved, not in my office, not in my company, not in my business, not in my group of friends. So it's living that model. And then I do think, this about this economic empowerment is whether it's diversity in the workplace, whether it's in our business model, getting more women more successful, more confident, and stronger. And the rich thing is everyone needs to do it in their own way. Everyone needs to do it in their way.
I think one of the other things that we need to do is to work in partnership and to understand that no one sector can do this on their own, that it needs all of us. And so wherever we are, whatever our position is, we are able to do something. And sharing those skills, taking a holistic approach. So if you look at what we did when I was dealing with domestic violence here in the United Kingdom as the minister, we had a whole country approach. We needed government, local government, businesses, local people. The private sector was working with the third sector, the charities, and it was the combination that enabled us to change. When we did the assessment in 2003, right here in the United Kingdom, the cost of violence against women was £23 billion. And it was 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men who were affected by this. And by the end in 2015, we'd cut domestic violence by 64% and we'd saved 7.1 billion. But it took all of us. If any of us had thought, oh, I'm the government, I could do this. I'm private sector, I can do this. I'm a charity, I can do this. I'm an individual. No, it was the collaboration. And therefore, if you just look at our panel, it takes all of us. European level, individual level. The internet is so important now. It can be used both as a sword and a shield. And we have to decide which one it's going to be. That's going to be looking at regulation. Do we need it? If we do need it, how do we do it? How do we inform parents? How do we inform companies so that we can work together? Parliaments. If parliaments aren't going to demonstrate what peace looks like, what respect for individuals look like, then how do we expect the rest of us? But we need the activists, the passionate, the strong, and also we need the quiet. And I really agree with what you say about needing men. I had a magnificent feminist father, and I was one of my parents' 12 only children. I was their 10th only child, right? 7 boys, 5 girls. I adore my brothers. I think my brothers are the best thing since sliced bread. And when I first experienced someone else having domestic violence, I was in a state of shock because I thought men don't do that. They're nice and they're gentle and they're kind and they're warm. And when we think about 1 in 3 women, we have to accept that that means 2 out of 3 women do not suffer from it. And that's where the silence comes from. Because it's not happening to me, and I can't believe, and if I hadn't done this as a lawyer, I could have lived my life with my beautiful father, my 7 brothers, my great friends, and a wonderful husband, and never seen it. So I think we have to talk about it, and we've got to become a gang.
Amen to that. And if I could just quickly add on the economic empowerment of women, I think it's important to address the cultural mindset that women have to face in the workplace, say in organizations. If you look at the records of how many female entrepreneurs actually get capital to support and promote their businesses compared to men, even though their business ideas may be far better, right? It's a very, very, very low percentage. Look at the fact that women in the workplace, in big organizations or small, when they seek to move forward, they're called aggressive. They're called ambitious. Like there's something wrong with that. I'm very fond of saying, don't call me aggressive, I'm assertive. There's a difference. But if you want me to show you aggression, let's take it outside. Where's my head tie? Right? But there's a difference. And if women continue to be treated as though by saying what you want, that's a problem, that does not help economic empowerment. Because women should be able to demand their salary. They should be able to go, this is the benchmark in my industry, this is what I bring to the table, this is the commercial narrative for it. So yes, I should earn ABC. Heck, I know that my partner at work, my colleagues are earning ABC, but the moment women open their mouths, they're treated as though they're some I don't know, species that should not have the entitlement to give an opinion. That is something we must address when we talk about economic empowerment of women. Women should be earning the same. The days and the era of, well, a man should earn more because he has a wife, children, and all that nonsense. Are you kidding me? No. And a woman, like you said earlier, stop relegating women to, I don't know, causes or purpose or some kind of function in society. A woman can choose to be who she wants to be, but her entitlement to be paid for her service should not be questioned. She should not be brought down for it. So economic empowerment of women must recognize that women have every right to demand what they are due and what they earn.
And I think this is also what's so important about the Time's Up movement, you know, that we're hearing so much about, and the Women's March, that exactly to this point, that the Women's March is the single largest march. When was it? On January, the first one, January 2017, globally. So this idea of we're now so much a global community that something like that was possible, but it's the largest march in history. And since that, obviously the Time's Up movement, the Me Too movement have come out of that. Do you feel a difference in there being more voice to these issues because of those movements? Do you feel that there's something is shifting? It feels to me like that people feel more motivated, more politicized, that exactly these kind of events are creating a space where people can actually speak up and don't feel they have to be silent anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm convinced that it gave us more voices, more commitments also to change, let's say the world. Because I can remember in Switzerland we had last June a purple march with almost 500,000 of people in the streets in a country of 8 million inhabitants. It's quite a lot, and asking and marching for equality, for equal salary, for the possibility to choose for themselves. A lot of women, of course, also many men with them, because this equality concerns the whole society and brings something not only to women and girls, but also to men and boys, and the whole society needs that all its members have the same right and the same place, because it's the only way to let everyone give all the possibilities he or she has in himself, and that's it was something very strong because and it also impressed the parliamentarians, the politicians, even if they had this short-term view, which I can very well understand the reproach. But for sure, this is we have 4 years or five years terms, and that's also something we have to consider. But we need such voices. We need such pressure. Not something against the politicians, but something forward and to work with them and to. But I just have a remark about what you said, Patricia, because when you said that you could also have lived without seeing any kind of domestic violence, I'm not so sure. I must, unfortunately, I have to say that I think that sometimes we are also either the victims don't want to show outside how it is because they're ashamed, and so and it's not the ideal they were followed, and just one example in my own politician life, I was last week in one national parliament of one of our 47 member states, and I met some MPs, men and women, and one woman told me, but she was very convinced of that. No, for sure, in my parliament, nothing, no sexism at all. No, that's such kind of thing. It's not possible that. But I'm sure she was convinced, but I'm sure so that was not the case, not the truth. And the same with my neighbors, for example, the family living near me. I'm not sure if I could have opened my eyes. And so really what happened...
This is what I was saying, though, because one of the things I had to accept, because I've been doing this work since I was 21, and so I saw it everywhere. And it's very easy to think that you see what everybody else sees. And what I realized is we had to acknowledge that not everyone saw it. And so one of the most powerful things we had to do is to help people to understand what they were seeing. So for example, it was very unusual for violence, physical violence, to come from nothing. What quite often happens is it starts with verbal abuse and separation. So you'll find that a woman will be demeaned by her partner. She'll be attacked verbally and be told that there's something wrong with her. You know, did you really have to have your hair that way? And then gradually isolated from the people who care for her, isolated from the people who may stand up for her. And then once she is isolated, it then usually moves from verbal abuse to physical abuse. And it'll start with a push, and then a punch, and then a kick, and then there is an escalation. So one of the huge things I think we have to do is to help people to understand what you're seeing. If you start to see a very beautiful friend of yours all of a sudden start to change and become quieter and dress differently, know that that is a sign which is not okay. And I think the thing is, if you have never experienced it yourself and you don't, it doesn't seem to touch your life, you don't see what you are seeing. You don't understand what you're seeing. And so what we have to do is to educate people about what they are seeing. And it's so easy. I mean, I've lived, breathed, slept this thing. And as a result of doing so many cases, I can literally see when a woman's suffering. And that's why I say it's important for us to say, how are you? And then listen, because when we did a lot of this work and we talked to women who suffered this, and I asked them, what would have made the difference? And so many of them said, if just one person, when they asked, how was I, actually meant it and hung around and to hear the answer. So I'm saying that we have to not be silent to enable others. And sometimes I've described someone else's situation because I've got the feeling that this is happening to the person I'm sitting next to. And after you've described what is happening to someone else, they say quietly, that's me. And I had it. We was three of us in a room. There was, I was being interviewed, there was someone behind the camera, and there was someone asking me the questions. And so I said, look, there are three of us in this room. It could be any one of us, because it's 1 in 3 women in the world. And then the interviewer went really still, and I can still feel sort of goose pimples now, and she said, yes, it's me. And it was happening to her right then. And that's the other thing that we have to understand. This thing comes in all sizes. And there is no pain greater for a man if he is the father, the brother, the friend, to watch another man abuse and vilify, destroy, and then maybe kill somebody they love. It is absolutely shattering. And therefore what we're saying is we need good men and good women, and we need to ensure that all those women know you don't have to marry a gargoyle. There are great men out there. Great men out there. And we are saying down with the gargoyles.
Down with the gargoyle.
We are almost at the end. We have only a couple of minutes left. Do you want to share any final thoughts before we have to close the panel?
Yes. Is that a surprise? I know. Shola's at it again. Just to follow on what you said, I just want to quickly say to women out there who are watching today, you have done nothing wrong. There is no shame in what you're experiencing because it is not your fault. And sometimes it's that shame that stops women from speaking out. Please speak out. Take the power away from the abuser and speak out. because the abuser is more afraid of the world knowing about what they're doing than anybody actually, you being worried that someone's going to look at you differently because of what you're experiencing. What you're experiencing needs to end. Take that power away and speak out.
I like this. This is also something, there it is, not in my house, not in my parliament, not in my presence, not in my company. This is a sort of a mental commitment and attitude, which I think if everyone starts getting, because in the end it's, what am I going to do? Not in my home, not in my parliament, not in my company, not in my community. I think that's the action that we can then all take.
And say to them that we have tools in order to help them to go out of this bad situation.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This has been an amazing start to Peace Day. Please keep watching us. Thank you for joining this morning, and stay with us because there'll be more throughout the day. So happy Peace Day. Thank you.
Happy Peace Day.
Thank you.